and welcome to Labour Lens. So I am Sharon Ijason. On this week's episode of the program, we'll be discussing all about the suspension and the increase of tariff and how it's going to affect Nigerian workers. We will be right back.
The Maritime Workers Union of Nigeria alleged plots by employers in the maritime industry to slash workers' salaries and other benefits. The union, in a May Day message, warned employers to prepare for war, as organized labor would not accept plots by employers to further impoverish workers. The message by the President General of Maritime Workers Union, Adewale Adeyanju, said the union will resist any attempts to punish its members for the coronavirus lockdown, arguing that the situation was not the fault of workers. The union stands with its Labour Centre, the Nigerian Labour Congress (NLC), which has acknowledged that despite the known fact that workers produce capital, they are always relegated and at the receiving end. The workers warn that any move to deduct the salaries, wages, allowances and downsizing of Nigerian workers at this time is illegal and therefore must be resisted, as maritime workers had been mostly on the front line and that there was need to safeguard their lives while on essential duties. NEMASA was urged to reissue biometric identity cards to dock workers and seafarers, while a review of minimum standard for the dock labor industry is essential. The reduction in prices of seafarers' certifications will also boost morale of port workers. Organized labor under the aegis of the Association of Senior Civil Servants of Nigeria has criticized the decision of the federal government to commence the process of merging some ministries, departments and agencies, MDAs and scrap others, sending thousands of public servants into the oversaturated labor market in the process. In a press statement issued in Lagos, the Secretary General of the Union, Alade Bashir Lawal, expressed shock that the federal government chose this time when the whole world was mourning the deaths of thousands of people killed by coronavirus to implement the Steve Oronsaye report, which recommended merging of some MDAs and scrapping of others. Lawal added that Nigeria is already rated as one of the poorest countries in the world, and if government carried out its plan to throw thousands of workers to the streets at a time like this, it would lead to monumental social crisis that no one could predict the end. He explains that all over the world, governments of various countries are providing financial stimulus to different sectors to stimulate the economy, while citizens are being paid some money to enable them survive the hardship of COVID-19 pandemic. According to him, the union wants President Muhammadu Buhari to direct relevant organs of government plotting to implement the Oronsaye report to desist so as not to trigger industrial and social unrest in the country at this critical period. He posited that there might be some fifth columnists in government that are pushing for implementation of the Oronsaye report in order to mislead the president into entering a coalition cause with millions of Nigerian workers, thereby disrupting the prevailing cordial relationship between his administration and the labor movement. The union emphasized that the time to implement the Oronsaye report is not now. The leadership of the National Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Workers, NUPENG, and the Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, PENGASSAN, have frowned at reports of attempts by some multinational and indigenous oil and gas companies to use the excuse of the COVID-19 pandemic to lay off workers or cut pay. In a statement, the unions said reports from their members indicate that some employers in the oil and gas sector are planning to rationalize, downsize, sack, introduce indecent work system, or reduce salary and allowances of workers in the industry, blaming it on the coronavirus pandemic. While the leadership of NUPENG and PENGASSAN empathized with employers over the negative impact of COVID-19 on the industry, business operations and earnings, the unions believe that resorting to arbitrary sack of workers or introducing indecent working conditions should be avoided. This, the unions believe, will not bring anything good to anyone in the short, medium and long term. The leadership of NUPENG and PENGASSAN condemned such moves and vowed to resist them, as it will be unfair for selfless and patriotic oil and gas workers to suffer such fate, especially at the time they are at the front line of rendering essential services in the struggle against the COVID-19 pandemic.
As a union, we believe it will be morally wrong, and insensitive for any employer at this point in time, to sack any worker under the guise of COVID-19 or probably dropping oil prices. Because we're going to say that we're in a war period. And if we're in a war period, that means everybody must do whatever is necessary to assist humanity. And that is why we have seen cases where they have been donating, materials, cash, to the poor, to the vulnerable, to assist persons out there. So I think this period shouldn't be the time for any employer actually, to throw anybody into the labor market, because there are no employment there. So a month or two or three, so sacrifice shouldn't be too much for any employer, especially in the oil and gas.
Are you concerned about the casual workers in your sector?
Yes. Casual workers in my sector, unfortunately, have been categorized, into different types of service contract. We have direct contract, we have service, we have contract for service. There are so many types of services which they are being pushed under. But as an organization, we have also tried to also unionize them. So once we unionize them, we try to give them a collective bargaining agreement. And what that is done, that means we also give them sense of belonging. So we'll be trying to manage them. But basically, the sector is saturated with, contract staffing, because these days they don't employ workers on permanent basis anymore. And that is one challenge we are facing in the oil and gas industry. We have continued to shout, we have continued to cry, but nobody seems to be listening. It's very, very sad.
Arbitrary sack anywhere, not just oil and gas sector, is not acceptable. It isn't right. Employment is a contract, and the relationship is governed by some guidelines within the labor law as well as the collective bargaining agreement. So the expectation within the ambit of the law and the collective bargaining agreement is for the employer to have discussions with the employees. Where there is a union, you have that discussion with the union or the representative of the workers. So for an employer to just wake up and disengage people without having that discussion is not right. It is not acceptable. So the position is for employers to reach out and discuss whatever the situation is with the employees to find a solution and the proper way to disengage people. That is if they must disengage. Right now, members are not happy across the country. Members of PENGASSAN and NUPENG, they are not happy with what's going on. And that's why you see there was a publication last week by NUPENG and PENGASSAN threatening to take some actions if the situation doesn't get better. The IOCs and the oil and gas companies generally continue this. They call on the government, and we're expecting reasonability to prevail so that we don't get into a situation of industrial disharmony over such a simple thing that should be discussed on the round table, and a solution is considered.
Why is the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission forging ahead with the planned increase in electricity tariff? That's the question electricity consumers in the country are trying hard to find answers to. But worry over the increase have remained in the public space since December when the Commission announced it would review the multi-year tariff order 2015 and remittance order for the year 2020. With the kickoff looming, the Commission says its new date for the hike is June 2020, citing the lockdown occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic. During a visit to communities in Lagos, residents who use prepaid meters are of the view that the increase has already been implemented as they now get lesser units after purchase.
It's a pity we are going to experience this at this critical period because there is a lockdown. We've been asked to stay at home and we need to be informed about what is going on in the nation and the globe at large. And if this is the time that the discos choose to increase their tariff, I think it's not right. If there is anything the government will do in terms of palliatives, talking to them, and if it means advancing some funds to them for them to make sure that we have light, because we need to be we need to know what government is asking us to do while we sit at home as well, so that we will know the right decisions to take.
I totally disagree because of what is going on right now. This is not the right time to increase anything. Number one, many people are not going to work. Two, traders are not working, they are not opening their shops. Where will they get the money to pay right now? So it is possible we are not saying they should not increase it, but not this time around. They should try and postpone it meanwhile.
The bill they are giving us is crazy bill. So we are still fighting the one on ground. We still want to increase the tariff. It's not going to help. The salary is not increasing.
The General Secretary of the Nigeria Union of Electricity Employees, Joe Ajero, announced that the union is not in support of any form of hike in electricity tariffs.
I think they are insensitive from the look of things. A period like this are periods that countries offer reliefs. Countries of the world offer reliefs, periods of shutdown, periods of public holidays. That is when you have tariff relief, that there will be no tariff at all, tariff holidays. For the NEC to say they are going to increase tariff, even while the country is shut down, I think they are so insensitive. Besides, the issue of tariff increase is an issue that has not been resolved. It's a matter that is still on. It's a matter that is pending. But should they go ahead and do it now? I think they have given us notice for action and for response. We are not going to behave like them. We assume that they gave us 14 days notice or ultimatum to respond. After this time, after this period of pandemic, after this period, we are going to respond to them. And I think let them know that the issue of tariff increase has not been resolved, and they should not use a period of a national emergency or global emergency to extort Nigerians. So it's unacceptable. They may equally cut corners by collecting the money from those who are paying through prepaid meters, but thereafter, we are going to revisit it. And I'm saying it passionately from the point of a stakeholder in the sector, because the responses are usually worst on us. In the last 1 month, we have lost close to 4 people, through attack from Nigerians, as a result of services being rendered by these companies. And it appears they are very insensitive to all this. If they increase this and the attack continues on our members, then we will have to take a rethink on this whole exercise. But this time around, if they go ahead with this exercise, we are going to link up with other Nigerians and make sure that they get the reward for this insensitivity.
Recently, the Minister for State for Labour and Employment, Festus Keyamo, shared a tweet requesting pay TV services provider to extend existing subscriptions by at least 1 month free of charge as their own contribution to ease the pains of Nigerian workers at this time of lockdown. The statement is attracting criticism from some people who urge the minister to focus more on pressing matters. The Nigeria Labour Congress (NLC) in a statement also requested the immediate reversal of the directive issued by the electricity distribution companies DISCOs on the planned tariff increase in power utility. On the profile interview segment this week, I will be speaking with the General Secretary of NUI, Comrade Joe Ajero. He will be shedding light on what workers should be expecting from the suspension of the increase in tariff. It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you very much.
A lot has been happening in the power sector, and top of it is the suspension of the increase in the electricity tariff. Can you tell us how is your union taking this information?
Well, we are told that the tariff increase has been suspended, and we didn't know when it was concluded that there will be tariff increase. Ordinarily, the law permits the stakeholders to meet with the electricity companies to dialogue and agree on an acceptable tariff increase. But when we heard of a suspension, we were worried because we were not aware of the conclusion and the agreement to increase tariff. So to us, we are still calm, watching, and to find out what happens next. But you don't suspend something that is not in existence.
Okay, now, if you are of the view that there was no pronouncement or an agreement for an increase in electricity tariff, as a journalist, I've been getting feedback as regards some people, some prepaid meter users already complaining that they're already paying more than double, or they are getting lesser units for the amount of electricity power tariff that they've been paying before.
Well, I think that would be a very dangerous precedent if tariff is increased from the back door. Like black market increase in tariff. To that extent, if even NAC has announced to Nigerians that the tariff increase has been suspended, or the proposed tariff increase has been suspended, it would be criminal of any operator in the sector to now go ahead to adjust a tariff. If that happens, such people should be brought to book.
Okay, moving forward, there was this conversation about perhaps maybe Nigerians can enjoy free electricity supply for the next 2 months, looking at the fact that we are also facing the challenge of the coronavirus pandemic. A country like Ghana, for example, has actually announced 3-month free electricity supply. What's your take on this?
Well, I think that's, they didn't tell us the way they are going to implement it. If you look at Ghana and some other areas, those are areas that the state is still in control of the exercise. If the Nigerian state is in control of the power sector, definitely they can afford to give a waiver for some years. And if in the MOU, for the outsourcing or privatization of such businesses, contain the issue of having reliefs, especially public holidays, and then occasions like this, then it should be easy for the private sector people who are driving the process to do that. But you see, in an era of a prepaid metering, whatever you bill people nowadays, it's like they have paid for it already. I'm still worried how they could have implemented that unless there's a dubious attempt to pay more money to the operators in the system, even after the meters are running. So until they tell us what they want to do about it, I think that it is a very, very, very dicey, and I don't think it's something you can wake up.
Would you say that the conversation about privatization is also very important for us to continue to have the conversation about the need for maybe the issue of privatization to be looked into? Because looking at the fact that the federal government has 40% stake in the power supply, Nigerians are still not getting the best from the sector.
Well, I really don't know whether the federal government knows what is happening in the power sector, because if they hold 40%, especially in the last 6 years, it will be possible, it will be important for the federal government to announce to Nigerians what they have gotten from their 40% investment in the power sector. If for 6 years or 7 years, they have not gotten any one kobo, and when they have a 40% stake in a business, then I think there's need for us to know what actually is the issue. So the federal government is not bothered. They say they have 40%, and then they hand it over 100% to the so-called private sector. So it appears that the federal government is a stranger to the process or to what is happening in the power sector.
So very quickly, your members are also working from home, and others are also on the field. They are offering essential services. Would you say that the employers in the sector are actually providing safety kits to ensure that they don't contract the disease or the virus, pardon me?
Well, we have tried to put pressure, to check out how it's happening. In the other places, I think we have lost 1 or 2 people, in Delta and whatever, some senior officials. We are taking it serious, to make sure that such measures are provided. And where possible, people were allowed to work from home. So we are trying as much as possible, but I want to tell you that the situation is real and may be hit.
Finally, there's this conversation about massive job loss, looking at the predictions from the International Labour Organization, saying that more than 22 million people would lose their jobs globally. Countries like USA, the United Kingdom, we've seen many workers actually file for unemployment. Would you say that there's this possibility of your members losing their jobs?
Well, I've not seen the possibility of members in the power sector losing their jobs, because the after effect of what is happening now is going to be much. In a prepaid process, no employer will give us the background that he didn't make money within this period. Even the bills, even if it's the mechanical way of billing, people will still pay their bills. Or even in the other process, the government, as they are trying to give free supply of free electricity, it is still a plus to the private sector or to the investors. So nobody will hide under the cloak of coronavirus to terminate people, because the people are badly hit. So definitely it's going to be, a kind of power relation thing, because we know too well that no money is lost. More people consume more energy while this exercise was on, and it should not be. If they consume more energy, more money came into the sector within this period. So nobody should hide under that to contemplate, disengagement of people in the sector.
Thank you very much for joining us on the program. And that's all we can take on today's edition of the program. Join us next week for a fresh edition of the show. I am Sharon Ijason. Thanks for watching, and remember, labor creates wealth.